I am happy to be with you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you so very much. How has been your stay in Bangalore?
Oh, it's extremely ecstatic.
Wow.
Yes, it's very busy.
You've been having a lot of satsangs, Guru Maharaj?
I've been having a lot of fun.
That is a very good change. We are awaiting your invitation so that we can join the fun.
Okay, just 1 second.
Yeah, please. So this morning we had a japa yajna in the morning for His Holiness Jayapataka Swami.
How is his health now? Because I haven't heard lately. The critical 7 days passed, right?
Sorry?
Critical 7 days passed.
That's right, the critical 7 days have passed, and that's a very good news. So this morning from 7 to 8, devotees got together and then we did japa together. And indeed, prayers are powerful, undoubtedly. So the critical, yes.
So he still doesn't have any symptoms?
At the moment, he is not really showing any symptoms. He continues to go ahead with his daily Chaitanya Charitamrit Katha. So as per the doctors who did the transplant on him, they say that 7 days if he passes, then the worst is over.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
So very good news.
Yes, indeed.
Very good news. Okay, so we start now?
Yes, we will start. So a quick one. We are on the 12th session of the structural overview of Srimad Bhagavatam. And on behalf of the School of Vedic Studies, we are again, as always, very, very grateful to His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Gyapani Maharaj for taking us through this wonderful journey into Srimad Bhagavatam. We have reached up to the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And thanks to everyone who's been participating in these sessions. One thing our request is that we need to have some reading before and after. I think that will help us further to dive deep into what you illuminate each time that we have the session with you, Guru Maharaj. So we will really look forward to before and after readings also. So without much ado, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Please. No. Kindly.
Okay, so
You wanted to say something.
we'll start. No, I'll start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashta Prayasvabhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta-krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatara Juhava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Vinedus Tam Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi. So, once again, I'm happy to be with you. Initially, when we started this series of lectures, I thought it will be just 3-4 lectures. Now we're already on the 12th session, as it was announced by Rasakrida Parayana Prabhu. And we are trying to understand the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and the structure of Srimad Bhagavatam, how Srimad Bhagavatam is organized structurally to give us the complete understanding of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is repeated again and again, not easy. To understand Brahman is difficult, but not so difficult. To understand Paramatma is difficult, more difficult, but not extremely difficult. But to understand Krishna as a person, and especially in his highest manifestation as Braja Krishna, is actually very difficult. Even though it may seem to be easy for us. So Bhagavatam is purifying our heart to give us this experience, because ultimately to understand means to have the experience. Therefore, Vedas, they come from the Sanskrit root vid, and the meaning of the Sanskrit root vid, to know, is actually to see. To know God means to see God. Atmava are drashtavyam. One who didn't see the God in person, he doesn't know him yet. So, and therefore, the whole Bhagavatam is a darshan. It's darshan of the Lord, and ultimately it facilitates us to have darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person. And as we were progressing slowly through the different topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10 topics, Atra, Sarga, Visargascha, Sthanam, Paushanam, Utaya, and through the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, which roughly corresponds to these topics, even though all the topics are described in all the cantos, but still there is some emphasis to a certain topic in each particular canto. As we are progressing slowly, we are preparing our heart to the advent of Lord Krishna. The end of 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is this, event, advent of Lord Krishna, who is Lord Krishna, and then ultimately the beginning of the 10th canto, the advent of Lord Krishna will say. The advent of Lord Krishna within our heart, within our consciousness, within our buddhi, intelligence. So we are on the 7th canto, and as you probably remember, I described general structure and the message of the 7th canto in the last class, but because it was a little rushed, I couldn't describe the second part. And the second part is very important, because second part of the 7th canto is describing Varnasrama according to Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is what Prabhupada called his 50% unfulfilled mission. And this is what puzzles many, many devotees, how to fulfill it. And there are very diverse opinions about this. Some people say that just forget about it, it's impossible in our present day and age. Others say no, let's go for it, let's become very traditional right on the spot, get into some remote village, cut off electricity, cut off internet, and start plowing the field with the bulls. So there are different recipes or different ideas of how to apply this, and therefore it's very important for us to understand what is described here. Therefore, I decided not to go to the 8th canto today, but to devote our whole session today to this remaining 5 chapters of the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And trying to elucidate some points. Obviously, I will not be able to do justice to this important topic within short time, but nevertheless, try to explain important points which Narada Muni is doing. And in fact, this 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam is Narada Smriti. We all know that there is Manu Smriti, Yagyavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti, Vishnu Smriti. There are 20 Dharma Shastras. Only few of them are still extant, 6 as far as I know. The law of Dharma, the law of Vishnu, the law of Parashara, law of Yagyavalkya, and few others. Here we have the 21st Smriti, Narada Smriti, or the laws of Varnasrama described from the Bhakti point of view, because Narada is Bhakti avatar. He is the living manifestation of Bhakti, of devotional service, and he is redefining Varnasrama from the vantage point of Bhakti, from this angle of vision. And therefore it's very important for us. What is the place of Varnasrama? What is the system of Varnasrama? What are the main principles of Varnasrama? What is the purpose of Varnasrama for those who practice Bhakti? Because sometimes it is said that for those who are practicing Bhakti, Varnasrama is not necessary at all. And there are, you can make a strong case to this, especially taking quotes from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Srila Rupa Goswami. So that will be the topic of our discussion today, and I don't know for how long I will go, but please prepare your questions if you have. I will try to answer, or if you have some questions from the last session, I will also be happy to try to answer these questions about the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's start. I will read a very important verse from the beginning of this section of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter of the 7th canto, the perfect society for social classes. Text number 7. Dharma moolam hi bhagavan sarva veda mayo harihi smritam cha tat vidan rajan yena chatma prasidati. Dharma moolam, the root of religious principles. He indeed, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sarva veda mayaha, the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Harihi, the Supreme Being, the Supreme Person. Smritam cha, and the scriptures which belong to the category of Smriti. There is Vedas, Shruti, Sarva Veda Mayo. Hari is, consists of all these Vedas. He is the living manifestation of all Vedas. But not only the Shrutis, but also Smritis. Smritam cha, Tat Vidan Rajan, of those who know the Supreme Lord, Rajan or King, Yena, by this Dharma, religious principles, Cha, Atma, mind, body, and everything, prasidati, become fully satisfied. So, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Being, the Personality of Godhead, is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo, Vedanta vid, Vedanta krit veda viteva chaham. Krishna himself says, Vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo, I am to be known by all the Vedas. the root of all religious principles, and the memory of great authorities. Srila Prabhupada gives a very special translation of this line, Smritam Chatadvidan. He is the memory of all those who know Vedas. Very beautiful. O King Yudhishthira, this principle of religion is to be understood as evidence. The word mulam here can be translated as a root, that's an ordinary translation, but mulam also evidence, can be translated as evidence. On the basis of this religious principle, everything is satisfied, including one's mind, soul, and even the body. So if you want to have satisfaction, you should know Dharma, and you should know what is the root of Dharma, where you can, from where you can get Dharma, how you can follow these religious principles. That's the only way to be satisfied in this material world. So let's read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. As stated by Yamaraja, Dharmantu Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. That was one of the most favorite quotes of Srila Prabhupada. Yamaraja, the representative of the Lord who takes care of the living entities, of the living beings after their death, gives this verdict as to how and when the living being will change his body. He is the authority, and he says that the religious principles consist of the codes and laws given by God. Ultimately, the religious principles emanate from God. That's a very important point, which Srila Prabhupada starts with. No one can manufacture religion, and therefore manufactured religious systems are rejected by the followers of the Vedic principles. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyaha. Vedic knowledge means to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Therefore, whether one speaks of the Vedas, scriptures, religion, or the principles of everyone's occupational duty, all of them must aim at understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam therefore concludes, Savaipum sam parodharmo yato bhakti radoksaja haitukya pratihata yeyatma suprasidati. In other words, religious principles aim at learning how to render transcendental loving service to the Lord. That service must be unmotivated and unchecked by material conditions. Then human society will be happy in all respects. The Smriti, the scriptures following the principles of Vedic knowledge, are considered the evidence of Vedic principles. There are 20 different types of scriptures for following religious principles, and among them the scriptures of Manu and Yajnavalkya are considered to be all-pervading authorities. In the Yajnavalkya Smriti it is said, Shruti Smriti Sadacharaha Svasya Cha Priyam Atmanaha Samyak Sankalpajah Kamo Dharma Moolam Idam Smritam. That's the version of Dharma Moolam according to Yajnavalkya Smriti. And there is a version of what is Dharma Moolam, or the root of Dharma, according to Manu Smriti, which we will quote. So we will have 3 different versions of Dharma Moolam, what is the root of Dharma, how to get Dharma rooted within our heart. And the 3 different versions are quite distinct. They're different, according to different audiences. So we will understand this topic, we will start understanding this topic of Varnasrama Dharma while comparing these 3 different versions of what is Dharma Moolam. Dharma Moolam hi Bhagavan, Sarva Vedamayo Harihi, as in Bhagavatam. Samyak sankalpajakamo dharma moolam idam smritam. Swasya cha priyamatmanaha dharma moolam according to Yagyavalkya Smriti, and we will also read what is there in Manu Smriti about dharma moolam. Srila Prabhupada continues his purport. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpatayaiva Kalpate. The purport is that to become a devotee one must follow the principles laid down in Shruti Smriti. One must follow the codes of the Puranas and Pancharatrika Vidhi. One cannot be a pure devotee without following the Shruti and Smriti, and the Shruti and Smriti without devotional service cannot lead one to the perfection of life. So Prabhupada is beautifully puts everything in place. He said that yes, being a devotee we should follow Shruti and Smriti, which means following Varnasrama Dharma, but the following Varnasrama Dharma without being a devotee is useless. It will not bring you to the ultimate goal of life. So both things have to be there, and definitely Bhakti is the first, but nevertheless Varnasrama Dharma, following the duty, is also very important, because Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpatayaiva Kalpate. It only brings chaos in the society, even if it is Aikantiki, Ekanta Bhakti, even if you are following it very, in a very determined way. If you don't follow Shruti and Smriti, it will only create chaos. And that's very appropriate statement, because we know sometimes devotees become very fanatical and they say only Bhakti, only Bhakti, only Bhakti. Nothing of this, and that creates disturbance in the society. That actually has created a very bad reputation to ISKCON, when the devotees, especially in America in early days, they started violating or breaking all the regulative principles of pious life. They were lying, they were stealing, they were doing all kinds of strange things, and that created, great uproar among people in general, and brought about disrepute to ISKCON, which we are gradually coming out, or maybe have come out in some countries of the world. So it's right there in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina. Therefore, Varnasrama is very important, but in just one sentence, Prabhupada puts it in a proper perspective. One cannot be a pure devotee without following Shruti and Shruti and Smriti without devotional service cannot lead one to the perfection of life. Therefore, from all the evidence, the conclusion is that without bhakti devotional service, there is no question of religious principles. God is the central figure in the performance of religious principles. Almost everything going on in this world as religion is devoid of any idea of devotional service, and therefore condemned by the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam. Without devotional service, so-called religious principles are only cheating. Prabhupada is extremely strong in this purport at the end. Almost everything going on in this world as religion is devoid of any idea of devotional service, and therefore condemned by the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam. What Prabhupada means is that yes, the desire to please the Lord as a person is the root of religious principles. This is what Narada Muni is saying here. Dharma moolam hi Bhagavan. Indeed, the root of Dharma is Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Hari, who is Sarva Me Veda Maya, and whose will, whose desire, how to please Him is described in all the Vedas. All the Vedas are describing how you should behave to please the Lord. And if we don't have this very clear understanding that by following all these rules and regulations, ultimately what is the purpose to be achieved, the purpose which we should achieve is the pleasure of the Lord, the satisfaction of the Lord, that Haritoshanam, that Hari is ultimately satisfied, and whatever we do is Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam, is indeed pure waste of time, pure useless labor. So therefore this verse is basically the foundation for the whole second part of the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma Moolam Hi Bhagavan Sarva Veda Mayo Harihi Smritam Chatad Vidan Rajan Yena Chatma Prasidati. And ultimately, if the Lord is pleased, you will be also pleased. You will be satisfied. Everyone will be satisfied. All the people around you will be satisfied. If you are really pleasing the Lord by your actions, by your behavior. If not, then you will get all kinds of dissatisfied people, starting with yourself, somebody whom you see in the mirror every day. So that's the reading. Before we start describing the general review of this part, so let me chant Mangala Charan. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschita Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarvescha Kripa Sindhubheva Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yantah Pravishi Mama Vachim Mam Prasuptam Sanjivayata Kila Shakti Darasvadamna Anyamsya Hasta Charana Shravanatva Ganim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Swasyastu Vishwasya Kalah Prasidatam Dhyant Bhutani Shivam Mithodi Yamanas Chapadram Vajatata Lokshaje Aveshyatam No Matir Avyahaitu Ki. Prahlad Maharaj, in this prayer from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he prays, let our mind will go deep into the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and dwell there in the Supreme Personality of Godhead without any reason. Aveshyatam no matirapyahaituki. Let him be concentrated on Bhagavan without any expectation in return. So that's what we're trying to do by reading Srimad Bhagavatam and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's start. Let's go a little back in time. The 7th canto, as we said several times, is describing Uti, the impetus, the nature which we have, the impetus to act. Why some people have such a strong urge to act in a sinful way, and why other people are more inclined to act in a pious way. Why some people have Daiva Sampati, divine wealth, divine nature, and other people have Asura Sampati, the demoniac nature. And this whole topic is being described in connection with the broader philosophical point that is impartiality of the Lord, how the Lord is impartial. Because when we look around, we will apparently see that there are some people who have the nature which is more pleasing to the Lord. They are born with this nature. And there are some people like Hiranyakashipu who are born with the nature which is not pleasing to the Lord, and as a result of it they are bound to create abominable actions. And what to do in this regard? You know, the Lord doesn't seem to be, it seems to be that He is favoring other people. They are born with certain nature. And even if we take the idea of the previous slide, that it's according to your previous actions, still nevertheless, you know, what is the you know, if the Lord was really impartial, you know, he has to create equal opportunity system. Like in America, the democracy. Democracy means everyone has equal opportunities. Nobody is born with some privileges, even though in reality everyone has some privileges. But people are trying to say that, you know, we should have the system of equal rights. It means that nobody has privileges from the start, from the scratch. So how the Lord is impartial if we see that you know, people have different starting positions, how it is? And the answer, of course, which we give is that Bhakti is universal. Anyone can practice Bhakti. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you're intelligent or completely dumb, whether you are eloquent or you cannot even hardly speak, you know. I know at least one case or a few cases of people who were deaf and dumb. And nevertheless, they started, even though they were dumb because they couldn't speak, because of their contact with Bhakti, they started, they developed the ability to chant the holy name. So there is ample proof that Bhakti is available to everyone. That's okay, that's fine. If Bhakti is available and anyone can achieve the perfection in Bhakti, at least in human form of life, of course for the lower species of life, even Srila Prabhupada says in his famous speech about Hare Krishna mantra that even a child can do it, even a dog can do it. He says even a dog can come to the kirtan and join the kirtan. And sometimes we see these videos in the internet, the dog goes around Tulasi in Vrindavan, or dogs join Arati in Vrindavan and try to chant together with people who are glorifying the Lord. So the Lord gave this completely very democratic arrangement with Bhakti, and He says basically again and again and again everywhere that yes, Bhakti is available for everyone. You don't need to have any preliminary qualification. Therefore, the only qualification to execute Bhakti is faith, and anyone can develop faith. Faith is nothing, it's not a result of your intellectual capacity, it's not even a result of your previous good karma or bad karma. Sometimes people who are criminals, who are really desperate and who committed a lot of sins, they are much more receptive to Bhakti than those so-called pious people, because they know that all these sinful activities didn't make them happy. You know, I have a person acquainted or whatever he is. You know, he is from completely, totally, extremely sinful background. You know, he started taking heavy drugs in early life. He was taking, you know, so much heavy drugs that 3 times he was clinically dead because of the overdose of this heavy drugs, and he couldn't just get rid of it. And then he just got in prison, and he committed some crimes, and in prison he got Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And somehow or other, by Prabhupada's mercy, he read a part of this book. He developed a very strong faith in Krishna and in this process, which enabled him to give up all these heavy drugs just like this. You know, he said, I gave them up immediately on the spot. Of course, I don't know, in prison he didn't have this facility, but he said, I never returned to this, even though it's physiologically, clinically, practically impossible, because the heavy drugs destroy your mind, and the impression is so strong that people cannot function as a normal human being. Now he's a great devotee of Jagannath Prasadam. He is getting, tons of Jagannath Prasadam and distributing Jagannath Prasadam because he believes very firmly. So what I want to say is that, yes, the Lord is impartial, there's no doubt about it. Why? Because of this fact, because he gave us Bhakti, and there is no requirement for Bhakti. But then there is another question which arises. Not everyone is inclined to Bhakti. Some people are not inclined to Bhakti. And the example of it is in the previous part of the 7th canto. Prahlad Maharaj is preaching to his demon's friend, and we don't know what really happened with all of them, whether all of them became devotees or not. But Prahlad Maharaj is also preaching to his father, and his father, he became only agitated by his preaching. He didn't become a pure devotee. He is in contact with pure devotee, with Mahabhagavata devotee. He is hearing him from his lotus lips, very important instructions. He doesn't become a devotee. Prahlad Maharaj's wife, not his wife, but his mother, Kayadu, she was listening Narada Muni. Prahlad Maharaj was listening Narada Muni, and Kayadu was listening Narada Muni. And Kayadu was probably sleeping all the time during Bhagavatam class by Narada Muni. And Prahlad Maharaj, being just 7 months old or whatever, in her womb, he very intently heard everything, not only heard, but also digested everything, realized everything, and became Mahabhagavata pure devotee. So again, we see that there is apparent impartiality. And as I said last time, it's a habit of the demons to accuse the Lord of being impartial, as Hiranyakashipu does in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the idea of a devotee is to protect the Lord and to explain how the Lord is impartial. We can see that in the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Queen Kunti, she actually proves in a very beautiful way how the Lord is impartial. In her prayers, she is standing in front of the Lord and she is saying, you are equal to everyone. You are not only equal to me, but you are equal to everyone, and everyone gets from you what he wants to get. And everyone indeed has equal opportunity to become a devotee and to render service to you. So here there is a return to this topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, and as a return to this topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, returning to this topic of Srimad Bhagavatam again, we have to try to prove that and understand how the Lord is impartial. And we will definitely understand how the Lord is impartial by giving the alternative system. So we already said that this 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam describes how to get pure devotion. And the direct way to get pure devotion is to come in contact with a pure devotee, open your heart, listen to him, Shushushov Shradhadanasya, with faith, Vasudeva Katharuchih, from him about the topics of the Lord, Vasudeva Katharuchih. And then Syan Mahatseva Vipro, if you start serving Mahat, this great people, serving this great Mahan pure devotees, then you will get Bhakti. This is how Bhakti starts. You will get Shraddha, and because you will get Shraddha, you will get Bhakti, because Shraddha is the qualification for pure devotional service. But because not everyone is ready to do this, there is an alternative, indirect way of how to come to this point, how to prepare one's heart for devotional service, and that alternative way is Varnasrama Dharma. What is Varnasrama Dharma? Varnasrama Dharma is nothing but a preparational process, a very amazing and beautiful system created by the Lord Himself, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam. He Himself created this, and He says about this in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam. The Lord says this only because He wants to be impartial, only because He is merciful to everyone and He wants to give chances to everyone. So basically the essence of Varnasrama, or the essence of the second part of the 7th canto, is to understand how by following the duties of Varnasrama one prepares one's heart for Bhakti, and how one becomes receptive to Bhakti. What does it mean to become receptive to Bhakti? And how Varnasrama is always subsidiary to Bhakti. That's very important point, because oftentimes even devotees, they try to put Varnasrama over Bhakti, or to overemphasize Varnasrama, maybe not without the reason, maybe because Varnasrama is not a very favorite child in the devotional circles, and sometimes we do neglect Varnasrama. So to kind of create balance in this regard, this devotee starts overemphasizing Varnasrama, but that's a remedy which is more dangerous than the disease itself. So again, from the start I want to say that if we study this section of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will get a very balanced and proper view of what Varnasrama is, and we will be able to practically understand how to apply Varnasrama in the modern context. That's basically what I will try to explain. And before I go into some little details of this thing, I wanted to read a section from Bhaktivinoda Thakur Sri Chaitanya Shikshamritam, where he explains the evolution of a human being and the rules which are followed on every stage of development of a human being. Varnasrama is a certain stage of development. So we should very clearly distinguish between Varnasrama as a natural stage of development for the human being, for the civilized human being, and Varnasrama followed by us as devotees. There is a distinction, and basically Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say that there is a tension between Bhakti and Varnasrama. Even though Varnasrama is a very beautiful system which makes people pious and which facilitates, from one hand, facilitates smooth transition from material piety towards higher version of piety, which is Bhakti, transcendental piety, transcendental Dharma. From material Dharma to transcendental Dharma, Varnasrama Dharma is very important as a transition stage, or as a springboard from one stage to another. Nevertheless, we should not underestimate that there will always be some tension between those people who follow the rules of a lower stage and those people who follow the rules of the higher stage. And let us not fall into this trap. Why I want to read this paragraph from Chaitanya Shikshamrita? Because I'm sure if you listen to it attentively, you will understand certain dynamics which we can see in our society when the ardent followers of Varnasrama system condemn some people who are apparently neglectful to Varnasrama. And again, you know, it really has to be judged very carefully whether somebody is neglectful to Varnasrama or he is neglectful to the details of Varnasrama, but not neglectful to the essence of Varnasrama. So let's hear what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to say in this regard. The reason is that man's life takes the form of ascending steps. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying that our whole life is like a ladder, and we have to take one step after another step and follow very strictly the rules. That's from the section where Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains the following the rules on each stage of our life and each stage of our development. Those outside the Varnasrama system are on the lowest step. Those people who don't follow Varnasrama system, they're the lowest of all. I mean, it's unfortunately all of us. Atheistic moralists are on the second step. Very pertinently, Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls followers of Varnasrama as atheistic moralists, because pure Varnasrama system is about the morals, not about God. God is there, but it doesn't have to be there. And therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Varnasrama system is basically for those people who want to be moral, but they are atheistic. The second step. Theistic moralists are the third step. Theistic moralists also are included into the Varnasrama system. Or you may say that atheistic moralists are outside of Varnasrama. But no, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes these two stages within Varnasrama. First are followers of Varnasrama who don't believe in God or place him into some subsidiary role. And second Varnasrama division is those followers of Varnasrama who believe in God and who know that the God is the main point of Varnasrama. But then he says, Vaidya Bhaktas are the fourth step. Higher than them are those people who follow Vaidya Bhakti. And Raganuga Bhaktas are the fifth step. Yet higher than Vaidya Bhaktas are Raganuga Bhaktas. They are the fifth stage. So we have outside of Varnasrama two stages within Varnasrama, atheistic moralist and theistic moralist. Then we have Vaidya Bhaktas, and we have the highest Raganuga Bhaktas, the Bhaktas who are spontaneously following the heart, the raga, the attachment to the Lord in their practices of bhakti. So let's try also to identify where we are, whether we are primarily theistic moralists, followers of Varnasrama, who strive for God and who actually on the stage, or we are in essence in our identity are Vaidya Bhaktas, or maybe we are Raganuga Bhaktas, who knows. So please listen, it's a very important point. It's very important. It is the nature of the soul to ascend to the next stage, to the next higher step. But he should not ascend prematurely or too quickly. So it's the nature of the soul to try to progress. We want to be higher and higher and higher. Ultimately, every one of us wants to reach the highest stage. We all want to reach the perfection. So, and therefore he describes this ladder, and he says that yes, please go further. Don't stay in the place where you are. It doesn't matter where you are now. You are entitled to go all the way up there. That's no problem. But please don't be too much in a hurry. Don't try to do it prematurely or too quickly, because it will only create disturbance in your own life and in the life of others. Don't imagine that you're already Raganuga, Ragatmika, Raga, whatever, Bhakti, and you're serving the Lord in your spiritual body, whereas, you know, as again, I think Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to say this: people don't know how to go to toilet, and they imagine that properly, and they imagine that they are already, you know, practicing Raganuga sadhana. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati instilled this desire in his followers, establish Varnasrama, because that's a gradual progression, and you cannot reach the highest step without going through these steps. If you try to jump over all these steps, you know, like Prabhupada, he was laughing, you know, big monkey, big belly, Lanka jumping melancholy. That's English translation of some verses, Bengali verses, that, you know, that when big monkey with big bellies tried to imitate Hanuman and jump to the Lanka, they ended up somewhere in a big disgrace in the water, because they just cannot jump, too much belly. So basically Prabhupada used this example to say that you should not go prematurely. Therefore Varnasrama is an important stage of development. But you at the same time have to know where you have to reach. And therefore Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. Only after being firmly established on one step, it is possible to ascend the next step. So you cannot jump, because you have to have very firm foundation. So you have to establish yourself in this step, in this one step, and then go to the next step, and then go to the next step. That is why being qualified with steadiness on each level has been emphasized. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is explaining very important verse from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Svesvedikari yanishta saguna parikirtitaha. What is, when Uddhava asks, please tell me, what is guna? What is the proper behavior? What is the virtue? Shri Krishna answers to him, Svesvedikari yanishta. When you are established in your own position, in your own adhikar, and this being established is guna, everything else is dosha. And therefore Krishna repeats twice this verse. So what is this? Swadharma nidan, Swadharma, Sheyach Swadharma Vigunach Paradharmach Bhayavahach. It's better to perform one's own duty than to perform somebody else's duty, even if it's a higher duty. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur stresses this. Only after being firmly established in one step it is possible to ascend to the next step. That is why being qualified with steadiness on each level has been emphasized. When a person is qualified to ascend the next step, he must also give up attachment to the next step, to the previous step, to the old step. But if you reach the qualification, if you are established in certain position, you have to go further. Because the tendency is, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say, the tendency to cling to the old stage is called niyamagraha, clinging to outmoded rules. It's a very prominent, there is one tendency is to rush, and that is niyamagraha. You neglect the rules of each stage and you try to follow the rules which you cannot really follow. Another tendency is to cling to the old rules, and it is called also niyamagraha, when you're too much attached to the rules and regulations and you're not progressing through these ladders, through these steps. These two ways of niyamagraha are being described here. Because of this, the outcasts have no respect for atheistic moralists. It's very interesting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that those who follow the rules of the lower stage, they disrespect those who follow the higher rules. Paradoxically enough, instead of saying humbly, okay, they follow the higher principles, I cannot follow the higher principle. They try to denigrate the followers of higher principle to their level, or say that they're just pretenders, they're outdated people who follow all these outdated rules. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that those who don't follow this, they deride atheistic moralists. Those who are outside of Varnasrama. We can see those people, like in America, if you tell them follow Varnasrama, they say no, this is not modern. This is too conservative. Like Allen Ginsberg, he loved Srila Prabhupada in a personal way, but he didn't like Prabhupada's preaching too much because he thought it's too conservative. And many times he would introduce Srila Prabhupada to the modern people, to the modern hippies of the age. And he was the leader of these hippies, more or less. They were all praying to him and worshipping him. But he would always kind of apologize, please forgive this Swamiji for being so conservative. He doesn't believe in free sex. So he's too conservative. And basically that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying here. That people outside of Varnasrama, that they will always disrespect people who follow Varnasrama, even the atheistic moralists. The atheistic moralists have no respect to pseudo-theistic moralists. Pseudo-theistic moralists, or those who follow Varnasrama, they don't like those people in Varnasrama who follow the higher rules of Varnasrama. With the idea that they should reach God. Pseudo-theists have no respect to theistic moralists. Theistic moralists have no respect to Vaida Bhaktas. And Vaida Bhaktas have no respect to Ragatmika Bhakti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes all the way through, and he says that it's a human tendency. If you are on a certain stage, you will try to deride those people who follow the higher stage. And therefore, the ardent followers of Varnasrama, they will criticize Vaidhi Bhakti. And those who are following Vaidhi Bhakti, they will criticize those who follow Raganuga Bhakti. That's unfortunately human nature. So we should not fall into this trap. We should understand this is my level. I follow it very diligently and honestly and sincerely. Those who are higher than me, they are worshipable for me. I really, respect them, but I cannot do this now. I'm not trying to imitate them, but at the same time, when we develop such a respect towards those who are higher, then when we will reach the qualification of the higher stage, we will not cling to the lower rules and lower standards of our life. Because of such habit, the followers of Varnasrama often do not respect Vaidya Bhaktas. So this is this tension which I spoke about in the beginning of this section of my speech. The tension is there, we have to be very clear, and we have to understand the nature of this tension. And this tension is in our society, unfortunately. This tension actually came initially from those critics who criticized Prabhupada because he introduced women's ashram in his temples, introduced all these things, and they said he's destroying Vedic culture. Prabhupada, who probably made the most to establish Vedic culture all over the world and to glorify Vedic culture and to give people the idea, all kinds of Western people, the idea how glorious the Vedic culture is. By the followers of Vedic culture, he is criticized. He was severely criticized. But what happened within these 50 years, which separate us from these times of criticism of Srila Prabhupada, now the followers, some followers of Varnasrama criticizing within our society that you don't follow too much Varnasrama because you're too much into Vaidya Bhakti, you're neglecting some important rules of Varnasrama on the pretext that you're following pure devotional service. That's the dynamic which is going on, unfortunately, here and there. I don't say that there is no basis of this, but let's be clear of what's going on. Therefore, again, the balance is very important. This does not affect Bhakti itself, but it is a misfortune for those who do not take up interest in their own advancement. When we neglect Bhakti, the pure devotional service with the emphasis on serving the devotees, emphasis on chanting the holy name, emphasis on Srimad Bhagavatam, serving the deity and residing in the holy Dharma, when we don't put this on a higher possible position, studying the Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the holy name, then our following Varnasrama will become something which may not be so much desirable. But if we understand that this is the highest, and this is my stage, I'm gradually following, but I will reach this stage of Vaidya Sadhana Bhakti, pure devotional service, starting with Shravanam and Kirtanam, developing the attachment through the following of the rules of Varnasrama as the means to reach this stage, then it's very good, then it's very useful, then it's glorious, then it has to be emphasized again and again and again. Those at the higher stage naturally have compassion for those at the lower stage, but until the lower situated people are fortunate, they cannot give up their stage and develop the taste for the higher stage. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said everything here. And therefore, this is the way how Narada Muni is describing Varnasrama in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, this section of Srimad Bhagavatam starts with the question of Maharaja Yudhishthira, and Maharaja Yudhishthira asks, this is the second verse of this chapter, Bhagavan Srotum Ichhami, O my Lord, O my teacher, O Bhagavan, the representative of God, Shrotum Ichhami, I want to hear from you. Nrinam Dharma Sanatanam, I want to hear about you, the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal occupational duty, Varnasrama Charayutah, connected with Varnasrama. I want to hear about Sanatana Dharma, which is Varnasrama Charayutah, Yutam, Yat Puman Vindate Param, by which one gets Vindate Param. Vindate means to know. by which one gets the highest knowledge. What is the highest knowledge? Is the highest knowledge of God. So Varnasrama Dharma here is described as the means to know God. This is Sanatana Dharma, this is the eternal occupational duty with the idea to understand God, to Vindate. Srila Prabhupada often translates this Vindate. This is again from the same root, vid, to see, Vindate, Govinda. The Madhvacharya, he explains what the word Govinda means. Go means Vedas. One who is known by the Vedas is Govinda, who is described everywhere in the Vedas. So, Vindate, Param Vindate in this verse, in the second verse, Yat Puman Vindate Param, by which one can get the highest knowledge. Varnasrama is the way to get the knowledge of Krishna, to get the knowledge. And we have to always remember this. This is the purpose. Not Varnasrama for the sake of being Varnasrama. So that's what it is, and this is Sanatana Dharma, by which person actually gets the highest possible knowledge. And we can see that those who follow the rules of Varnasrama, their understanding becomes deeper, as opposed to those who say, you know, I'm pure bhakta and I can neglect all the rules and regulations. No, you will never get real knowledge of Bhagavan unless you know what are the duties which you should perform. And that's why Krishna established Varnasrama. I wanted to share with you some realization which I had this morning while I was reading these verses and these passages of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's interesting that, as I said, what is Varnasrama? Varnasrama is an institution which has been at one point of was at one point of time spread all over the world, and we can see the remnants of Varnasrama in the ancient culture of Greeks, in the culture of Romans, in Europe before it was dismantled, especially after the French Revolution, and now there is this crazy system of egalitarianism when everyone is deemed to be equal. Very dangerous, impersonal system. Therefore, Prabhupada said that the whole West is Mayavad. Why? Also because Varnasrama was destroyed and neglected and deprecated in the West. The realization which I wanted to share is that that's the proof in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 7th canto, that the Lord is impartial. If you are ready to practice bhakti, if you can develop this attitude of shraddha, of respect towards the Lord and towards the devotees, fine, very good, you can practice it. And at the same time, find out what you have to follow also. All this, four regulative principles, which is the foundation of Varnasrama, and so on and so forth. If you're not ready, Varnasrama is for you, and Krishna says exactly this thing in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, first he says in 4:11, I'm impartial, I'm just reciprocating with the people. How people relate to me, I reciprocate with them accordingly. I do what they, I just reciprocate. So then the question says, yes, what if the nature of the people is not so conducive for Krishna Bhakti? So what to do? Krishna says, yes, there are some people who have material desires. In the next verse, in the 12th verse, he says that, and they worship demigods. And then he says, Chaturvarnyam maya sristam varnasrama vibhagasaha. I created the system for those people who have material desires. For those people who are described in the previous verse, this is how Baladev Vidyabhushan explains this. For those people who are described in the previous verse, I created Varnasrama system. What is the essence of Varnasrama system? The essence of Varnasrama system is to help people to get purified from material desires. And when they get purified from material desires, very easily they will develop Shraddha in the process of Bhakti, and they will start worshipping the Lord, and the Lord will start reciprocating with them. So, again, in the very gist, the essence of Varnasrama is a social system for those people who have material desires, for those people who are full of material desires, who want to fulfill their material desires. That's the system for them which will satisfy their desires and will gradually purify their heart from the material desires and help them to develop bhakti in the Supreme Lord and become a pure devotees like Prahlad. So that's again in gist very the message of this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's an indirect way which helps to purify the heart for those who are not ready to practice bhakti. So I'm a little tired. But it's an important topic. So I promise to you that how Varnasrama works. What is the mechanism? You know, if we take modern society, what is modern society? Modern society is the social system which tries to increase the material desires within the people. It increases Trishna, the thirst, insatiable thirst. You know, you take some chips, salty, and chips will get you more thirst, and then you get some Pepsi, and you take Pepsi to satisfy your thirst, and you satisfy your thirst, and you take more chips, and then you take more chips and you take more Pepsi. So that's how the modern system works. The modern economical system cannot work for people who are satisfied in themselves. It will collapse because it just produces more and more and more useless things, and it can only be sustainable if the thirst within the heart of the people become more and more insatiable, and therefore you create all kinds of artificial needs in people, and it goes on, and ultimately it will collapse, but it will be huge tragedy for many people who are not prepared. So that's a crazy, absolutely insane modern system which destroys the world, destroys sentiments in human heart, destroys everything. Merciless, cruel, insane social system with egalitarianism attached to it. Everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. So what is the system? What is the alternative to this system? Alternative to this system is Varnasrama system with its understanding, and I will explain essential points of Varnasrama as opposed to non-essential details of Varnasrama. But let's proceed. The question which I am answering now, how Varnasrama works. What is the mechanism? By which mechanism Varnasrama helps us to get rid of the material desires? For that, the verse from Yajnavalkya Smriti is very important. the verse from Yajnavalkya Smriti, which Srila Prabhupada already quoted in the purport, and I explained to you that I promised to you that I will explain these three versions of Dharma Moolam. Again, let's read this Yajnavalkya Smriti verse. Shruti Smriti Sadacharaha Svasya Cha Priyam Atmanaha. So, what is the mechanism, how the Varnasrama system works? You follow Shruti, you follow Smriti, you develop Sadachar, habit for Sadachar, for your pious conduct. What is the result? Svasya Cha Priyam Atmanaha. As a result, you become happy. If you follow the rules of Varnasrama, you become happy, and therefore you become satisfied. And because you become satisfied, you don't have material desires which you thought that you will become happy by fulfilling these desires, and you realize that it doesn't really work, but you're anyway happy because you're pious. It's actually was the main point of preaching by Socrates. Socrates was saying that those people who are pious, they're happy. And if you don't follow the rules and regulations, you're not happy. You cannot be happy. No way for you to become happy. But anyway, let's not get into it. Therefore it is said here, Samyak Sankalpa Jakama Dharma Moolam Idam Spritah. So what happens, you become happy by following the rules, and then you develop Samyak Sankalpa Jakama, you develop desire to follow more and more properly all these rules. Because you feel the happy, you feel the reciprocation, Atma is happy, mind is happy, your family is happy, everyone is happy, then you develop desire to follow this Samyak Sankalpaja, determination. And because you're determined, you have the desire, Dharma Moolam Idam Smritam. You become very pious. So actually what is said in this Yajnavalkya Smriti is that the root of Dharma is your desire to be satisfied, and when you experience this satisfaction by following Dharma, then you will become pious. So in this way, you give people some initial impetus to be pious, and then they will naturally become pious because it's nice to be pious, because it's pleasing to the heart to be pious, because it's actually happy life, happy, simple, pure life which people lead. So Yajnavalkya Smriti said that's the root of Dharma. The root of Dharma, the Dharma of its root should be just your intelligence. If you're intelligent enough to understand that by following the pious way of life, Dharma, you will become happy, then you will become dharmic, you will become pious. That's version of Yajnavalkya Smriti. Let's see the version of Manusmriti. Vedo Akhila Dharma Moolam. The Dharma Moolam, the root of all Dharma is Vedas. All the Vedas is the root of all Dharma. You read the Vedas, you have respect to the Vedas, and you understand that you should follow the Vedas. Because in the Vedas it is said, do this, don't do this. Chodana Lakshana Dharma. What is Dharma? Dharma is this Vidi of the Vedas. Do this and Nishedas. Don't do this. If you have the faith in scriptures, you will follow this. Vedo Kila Dharma Mulam Smriti Shili Chatat Vidam. Also Smriti, which is according to the Vedas, and Shile, the behavior of those or character of those who know this, Tadvidam, who know these things, acharas chapi sadhunam, the behavior of sadhu, atmanas tushtireva he. So ultimately, it's interesting that Yajnavalkya Smriti says the root of Dharma is your desire to be satisfied and your experience of being satisfied by following Dharma. Manu says, no, the root of Dharma, Manu gives the higher conception. Root of Dharma is your faith in Veda. If you believe in Veda and if you see these people and you also follow these people, you also feel satisfaction. Atmanastushtireva cha. That's the last proof of Dharma. You do something good according to the Shruti Smriti and the behavior of good people, of sadhus, and you feel satisfaction. That's also root of Dharma, but that's the last root of Dharma. The higher root of Dharma, the higher understanding of how to establish Dharma in the society, on how to become pious yourself, is to believe in Vedas who say, do this, don't do that. But here we have Srimad Bhagavatam version of the same statement, and Narada Muni says, no. It's not the satisfaction of the soul which is the root of Dharma. It's not the Vedas which is the root of Dharma. What is the root of Dharma? Dharma Mula Hi Bhagavan. If you understand that Bhagavan is the source of all the Vedas, if you understand that ultimately you have to please Bhagavan, then as a result of it, Dharma Mula, you will lead a pious life. That's the real root of Dharma. The desire to please Bhagavan. You can only become perfectly pious, absolutely dharmic, follow all the rules, if this desire to please Bhagavan will become overwhelming, and by this desire to please Bhagavan, yeyatma suprasidati. It is also said here that by this you will become satisfied. Yena atma, yena chatma prasidati. Yes, you will become also satisfied, but that's not the starting point. Yajnavalkya Smriti says, be intelligent enough, you want to be happy, follow Dharma. Manu says, be intelligent enough, read Vedas. Vedas say, you will become happy, follow the Vedas. This is the root of Dharma. Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni in Srimad Bhagavatam says, understand that Bhagavan is the root of everything. If you understand this, if you follow this, this Varnasrama Dharma, you will become perfectly okay. So that's the foundation of Narada Smriti, the Dharma Shastra according to Narada Muni, the Dharma Shastra according to the Narada Smriti, the Dharma Shastra according to Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's an important part which I wanted to say, and I am already speaking for quite a long time. So let me say just a few more important things. So what are the essential rules of Varnasrama Dharma? We described the tension between Varnasrama and Vedic Bhakti. We described the proper place of Varnasrama, that Varnasrama is an instrument for us to achieve the highest goal of devotional service. We have to follow Varnasrama, no doubt about it. We should not forget about the ultimate goal of Varnasrama rules. Varnasrama works, we also established how Varnasrama works. It helps us to purify our heart from material desires, which are bothering us. We all know. We start chanting this material desire, that material desire. We want to get up and run here and there and chant your japa while, doing some healthy japa walk. No. Most important japa. Everything else is after that. All the health is important, everything else is important, but there has to be hierarchy of our goals. So concentrate on, at least for a few rounds, for 2, 3, 4 rounds on the holy name, and then you can walk, no problem. So this is what we established so far. We described different versions of different Dharma Shastras, 3 Dharma Shastras, including Srimad Bhagavatam as a Dharma Shastra, special Dharma Shastra. From the Bhakti point of view, what is the root? Dharma Mulam Hi Bhagavan, Dharma Projita Kaita Vatra, Paramo Nirmat Saranam Satam, Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadama. You understand that Vedyam, the knowable, Vedyam Vastavam, what you can understand is Vastava Vastavam, the most important essence of all creation is God. And if you understand God, Tapotrayan Mulanam, He is Shivadam. If you understand this, you will get auspiciousness and you will get rid of all the unhappiness. And in this way you get Yayatma Suprasidati, the special, very special satisfaction of the soul, not just Prasidati, not just satisfaction, but Suprasidati. Then you will follow Varnasrama as it is described by Narada Muni here. And I will leave it for you to read this section of Srimad Bhagavatam and understand what you can follow, what you cannot follow. Like for example, you cannot really be dressed in a bark of a tree nowadays. Not very practical. Some rules are not so essential. But so far this is what we have said. So what is the essence of the rules of Varnasrama? It is described next in the verses 8 to 12. In 7th verse we read together with the purport, and 8 to 12 describe these verses. 5 verses describe 30 qualities which are general, which are the qualities of civilized human beings for everyone. Everyone has to follow them. It starts with what? Satya, Daya, Tapa, Socham, which means Satya, tell the truth. 4 pillars of Dharma: Satya, Daya, mercy, Tapa, austerity, Socha, cleanliness. For Satya, we don't engage in gambling, because that's cheating. Among the cheating means gambling is the most abominable way of cheating. Therefore we follow this. Daya, mercy, therefore we don't eat meat, because cruelty towards other living entities is against this principle of religion. And if we want to be civilized or belong to Varnasrama, yes, we have to strictly follow this. Tapah, austerity. Austerity means we don't take intoxicants, because if we take intoxicants, you cannot become austere, because you only magnify your thirst within your heart. And Socham, we are very strict about following the so-called force regulative principle. We are not engaged in illicit sex relationship, because this is the most contaminating things of our consciousness. If you are engaged in this, or you're looking pornography or whatever it is, it's very contaminating. So that's the beginning, that's the foundation of Varnasrama system. And then, very interestingly, Narada Muni goes further Titikshana, Shamo, Damo, Ahimsa, Brahmacharyam, Tyaga, Svadhyaya, Arjavam, Santosha, Samadrik, Seva, and so on and so forth. He describes all these rules or principles of behavior which any civilized people should follow. And then he says, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Cha, Asya, Smaranam, Mahatam Gateh, Seve, Ijya, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Samarpanam. He basically repeats the same verse. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. And that's the trick. What is Varnasrama? Within Varnasrama, Bhakti is hidden. You have your desire. You have little pious credit, может быть, ты отключишь этот самый, оно выключается, потому что ты подключил это.
Нет, потому что свет у нас.
Но иногда свет там горит, а этот... Okay. Constantly the electricity goes up and off, and therefore it's really disturbing. It's better to turn it off completely. Выключи совсем, чем оно будет скакать туда-сюда. It's really disturbing. So, Bhakti is hidden within Varnasrama. Bhakti is actually the active principle of Varnasrama. Everything else follows from Bhakti. If you hear about the Lord, if you are a member of Varnasrama, you will have to hear Bhagavad Gita, you will have to do japa, you will have to hear Puranas and everything else. And then ultimately Atma Samarpanam. That's how Varnasrama works, and that's why Varnasrama works. Varnasrama only works because there is this electric battery of bhakti which gives energy. If we take away bhakti from Varnasrama, and if we follow all the strict rules of Varnasrama, this and that, it will become a dead instrument for exploitation of one people of another. And that's what unfortunately happened in India. Why this reaction is there, and still people worship Ambedkar, who created this Indian constitution and said that everyone is equal, because Varnasrama was misused, grossly misused. Why it was grossly misused? Because the element of bhakti which purifies the whole Varnasrama and electrifies, enlivens all Varnasrama, makes Varnasrama proper, gives the proper mood, bhakti, which is the mood of love. If you take bhakti from Varnasrama, it's a useless, cruel instrument of exploitation. That's what it will become, and therefore people rejected it. But not because it's bad, it's a good instrument, but because people misused it, and they somehow or other, through the historical development or the degradation throughout the time, they deprived or divorced bhakti from Varnasrama. So that's essence. And what Varnasrama does, what is the role of Varnasrama? Varnasrama makes us disciplined, and Varnasrama makes us very humble and respectful. The main principles of Varnasrama is follow strictly all these little details, you become disciplined. And when it comes to worshipping the deity, you become perfect in worshipping the deity. For Western people, it's very difficult to follow strictly the rules of Pancharatra. Why? Because they're not trained in Varnasrama. Of course, nowadays nobody is trained in Varnasrama. But Varnasrama means little details, you get up early, all the rules of cleanliness are naturally there in Varnasrama. So first is discipline. You do. you go and you take bus 3 times a day, or at least 1 time a day, not every Ekadashi. You clean, you maintain cleanliness, you do this, all the things which we do automatically. That's an essential part of Varnasrama, which Narada Muni will describe interestingly in these things. I will not go into details. Another essential part of Varnasrama, that's first one, discipline. Try to follow the rules without being too much attached to it, but still, you like to follow the rules. You like to be regulated. I remember I met long ago one very ardent follower of Varnasrama, and it so happened that we lived together for quite some time, for a couple of months. We were in a very close association, and then I overheard him speaking something about me. And he was glorifying me, actually, to my surprise. And he said, oh yeah, he follows all the rules, he follows all the rules. He was glorifying me. He's, very sattvic, very sattvic, very, very sattvic. That's why? Because we are bhaktas. And this sattva guna is natural. And we ultimately develop some taste for following these rules, the rules of cleanliness and everything, which followers of Varnasrama really appreciate. So that's one thing, discipline. Second thing is respect. In Varnasrama, why I several times quite strongly spoke against the modern trend of being egalitarian. Everyone is equal, because nobody is equal. Nobody is equal. It's a big cheating. And Prabhupada was very strong about it, very strong. Everyone is different. There is a natural hierarchical system. This natural hierarchical system will become useless instrument of exploitation, those who are higher to those who are lower, if there is no bhakti. But if there is bhakti within this system is beautiful, because it helps those who are on a lower position develop natural humility, and it helps them to experience the natural protection which comes from up down. So the proper Varnasrama system, where the bhakti is the living force, is that those who are on a lower position, they show respect and service attitude towards who are higher, and those who are on a higher position, their heart melts, and they want to do everything for those who serving them, and they bless them by giving them knowledge, by giving them riches, by giving them whatever is within their position. That's a beautiful system, and Prabhupada explains that without Varnasrama, without this following this Dharma, there cannot be peace in the society. That's the key. You become humble, naturally humble, and respect those who know more than you, who are more senior in age, who are more, more powerful than you, you manifest this. Who have more money, they also worthy of respect, because that means they are more intelligent than you. And especially those who have more bhakti, more devotion, who chanting more, who have more. And then those who hire, their heart will melt, and they will give everything to you. And another important feature of Varnasrama is ahimsa. You should not inflict pain to anyone. You should be very straightforward. Satyam, it's very important. And you should feed everyone. Still, this element of Varnasrama Dharma is still here in India. Everyone wants to feed you. That's culture of Varnasrama. That's the culture of Varnasrama based on love. And by this you will develop love to Krishna, you will develop natural humility towards Krishna. Being disciplined, you will become first-class bhakta, because you will follow your guru strictly, and you will also do it with natural humility. Being disciplined, you will follow strictly, you will do it without rebellious attitude. You will become first-class devotee. This is how Varnasrama works. Varnasrama trains you in some qualities which helps you to execute devotional service, and that's the essence of Varnasrama. You know, the natural hierarchical system which we have to respect is very important. Like I'm here now in Bangalore, and Madhva Mata, the Madhva line is very prominent here, and Madhvas, they have this Taratanya system, the hierarchical system, and they have, you know, position. This is Lord Brahma, this is Mukhya Pran Vayudev. Then they have 49 maruts, which are different aspects of Vayu, and they have different positions for different Vayus. Recently I just found out about it. This is Mukhya Pran, he is the highest Vayu. There is transcendental Mukhya Pran or Pran in the spiritual world. There is this demigod, there is this Vayu, who is the number 7 in hierarchy of demigods. There is this Vayu who is number 13 in hierarchy of demigods. This is this Vayu who is number 35 in the hierarchy of demigods. So it's not just 49 maruts. There are different grades of this. So they are into this, into hierarchy. And there's nothing wrong with it if I understand the essence of it. Yes, there is this natural hierarchical system which I have to respect, but there is also a feeling of love which makes me equal with everyone. By his love, Krishna elevates everyone to the equal position, and by manifesting love towards others, we will also not develop all this inferiority complex by occupying the position, the natural lower Shudra position which we are in. So, having said this, I really have to finish because I already overdue and leave some time for questions. I didn't describe the details, but I wanted to describe the essence of Varnasrama system. But what I want to say at the end, very important, because all of a sudden at the end, Narada Muni starts describing his own story. I was a Gandharva in a previous life, and then because I was singing cinema songs in an assembly of Sankirtan of pure devotees, they cursed me and I became Shudra. And because I became Shudra, I was born in a Shudra family. But then I served pure devotees and I became a personal associate of the Lord Narada Muni. So, why? He basically wants to re-emphasize again that Varnasrama is important, but Bhakti is more important. And therefore he says to Maharaj Yudhishthira, your Pandavas are the most glorious because you have Bhakti. It doesn't matter that you are the kings. You are higher than any Munis. At the end of the 10th chapter, he says, Narada Muni continued, my dear Maharaj Yudhishthira, all of you are extremely fortunate, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead lives in your palace just like a human. Great saintly persons know this well, and therefore they constantly visit this house. The great saintly person, those who are highest in Varnasrama system, the highest rulers of Varnasrama, the purest of the Brahmanas, they go to Pandavas and they bow down towards Pandavas. Why? Because Pandavas are pure devotees. And having said this, Narada Muni again repeats this. At the end of the 15th chapter of this 7th canto, he again repeats this. O King Yudhishthira, because of your service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all of you Pandavas defeated the greatest dangers posed by numerous kings and demigods. By serving the lotus feet of Krishna, you conquered great enemies You were like who were like elephants, and thus you collected ingredients for sacrifice. By His grace, may you be delivered from material involvement. So he says that all the achievements of Varnasrama, the highest knowledge, the highest respect, the highest power, military strength, heroic feats, conquest over your enemies, money by which you collected all the ingredients of the sacrifice, you performed the most greatest sacrifice ever, and ultimately liberation, everything is coming to you because of your bhakti. It's bhakti which is the root of everything else. And if you place bhakti as the rule, bhakti towards Bhagavan as the rule, then you become naturally pious. And then you follow all these rules, you become a pious brahmana. If you have this constitution, if you become very powerful kshatriya, you become very rich vaishya, you'll become very good shudra. And ultimately, you know, even if you're shudra, if you are following this, by the association of devotees, you will become completely purified and you will become pure Bhakta. And that's why this example of Narada Muni, of himself being Gandharva, is there at the very end to re-emphasize the importance of Bhakti and how Bhakti overrules all the rules of Varnasrama, not contradicts the rules of Varnasrama, but actually supersedes all the rules of Varnasrama and helps one to get in contact with pure devotees. But Varnasrama nevertheless is very important because it's also an instrument of indirect bhakti, a very glorious invention of the Lord to help those who are not ready to practice bhakti directly, to purify their hearts and ultimately get prepared for pure bhakti. And this is what we're doing. We're following some sort of Vaidhi, sometimes mixed with Varnasrama duties. Sometimes Varnasrama duty is very important for us, according to our position. No problem, it's very good. Be very good Grihastha. Be very good Vanaprastha or Brahmacharya or whatever. Follow this very strictly. Very important. Read this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. But understand that ultimately you have to become a pure devotee, and the only means to become a pure devotee is while performing these duties of Varnasrama, is to associate with the devotees, serve the devotees, and especially serve Srila Prabhupada as a pure devotee, serve his representatives. And in this way, Yayatma Suprasidati, obtain the complete satisfaction of the soul. So that was my not so short presentation of this important section of Srimad Bhagavatam and how it is connected with the main topic of the 7th canto, Uti, how we develop our nature. We can purify, rectify our nature and material desires if we follow Varnasrama, and that's very important. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, today's session by far brought the most clarity on this subject of Varnasrama, which you rightly mentioned right in the beginning of your session. Has a lot of not question marks, but certainly there are a lot of differences of opinions. And I think, at least for myself, it brought a huge amount of clarity that Varna Ashram has its own place under the umbrella of Bhakti. It is something where it is enabling to take us into the realm of Bhakti, as opposed to existing in its own silo. So there are quite a few questions. I have two, and Anupama Radharani has also got two. So can we take about 3-4 questions?
Yeah. Let's take 3-4, not more, because I have so many other things to do also.
I have one question, which is the idea and the ideals of Varna Ashram, how do they fit in with the reality of, particularly I'm talking about ISKCON and ISKCON devotees as it has manifested from Srila Prabhupada's time to now, which is from a temple-based devotee institution to a largely congregation-based. So, how does Varna Ashrama fit in this new reality of ISKCON? Where is it heading? And the outcomes that you spelled out of following the key essence of Varna Ashrama, does it fit into the current reality where our majority of our devotees are in the congregation, and I'm certainly one of them? If you could throw some light on that, Guru Maharaj.
We are living in a very hostile environment, which is definitely anti-Varnasrama, because the ideals and ideas of the modern society, of the philosophers who are behind the modern society, all this propaganda which is going on in a very vehement way everywhere in the internet, all these democratic ideas and ideals, they're very hostile to Varnasrama ideals. And we should not underestimate the extent of this hostility, even in India. You know, I remember I was in Govardhan and I met with some Indian people, and I think they and we at one point we started talking about Varnasrama. I don't remember how it developed, but I found out that they came to Govardhan to celebrate, I believe, Ambedkar's birthday, and on the occasion of Ambedkar's birthday, they burned Manusmriti. they did this public autodafé, which Nazis did, you know, by burning these sacred books. That's the extent which hostility to ideas and ideals of Varnasrama is there even in some sections of Indian society, unfortunately. That's a reality which we are dealing with, and therefore it's very unpopular to propagate these ideas, and therefore Prabhupada is very bold, you know, in this day and age. He's in the West, he's propagating Varnasrama and ideals of Varnasrama, and describing these ideals of chaste wife, how she should be chaste to her husband and everything else. So, having said this, how to incorporate these ideals living in this environment? It's not going to be easy, but at the same time, it's not entirely impossible. We have to, you know, honestly define our nature according to Varnasrama inclinations. Of course, which probably will be Varna Sankara, because we are Varna Sankara. We will find out different inclinations within our heart, but still there is some prominent nature is there. Try to, you know, execute it very honestly. Try to do, you know, it's also interesting. Anyway, I will not touch this. No, this is too controversial. Anyway, so at least we should definitely do Ashram Dharma, which Prabhupada calls the spiritual stages of life. And Ashram Dharma means to be proper, you know, student of Vedic literature, you know, to study Vedas, to become proper Grihastha, execute proper duties of Grihastha, earning money, taking care of dependents, feeding others. It's fun to be a Grihastha because you know you have to work hard and then feed others, and that's very good. Host in your home, so many people. Invite, take, do some Bhakti Vriksha program or whatever, and feed everyone to their heart content. That's Varnasrama, that's the duty of Grihastha. And then become little detached from it. And Vanaprastha means basically go to some holy place, travel, and share your experience, teach others, and then become sannyasi if you are Brahmana by nature, and dedicate completely, fully yourself by teaching others. So at least this everyone can do. Try to be proper grihastha, proper vanaprastha, proper renunciate, proper brahmachari, proper wife, proper husband. Execute your duties. And as far as the varna duties, it's more difficult in the present society. So, what can we do? Just do the needful. Try to at least be engaged in some not as sinful enterprise. That's also a very important thing. Not be involved into this gross sinful activities like meat industry or wine industry or tobacco industry, this kind of stuff. That's the extent which we can, and then ultimately establish some communities where we can more properly practice Varnasrama. That's also important, especially in nowadays when the world is so unstable and the present economic system can collapse at any moment of time. And it will collapse. Well, when it will, and it will be a big tragedy. So be well established in this regard. At least have some plot of land where you can grow your vegetables and little rice. Or if you cannot do this, understandable enough, support those communities which, due to crazy economic system, require, unfortunately, extra support from outside. Support those rural communities which are there, which are gradually coming up. Help them. That's also important. That will serve purpose in the future. That's very far-sighted to help people, those dedicated people who are, leading very difficult life in the modern day and age, to lead their life. But if you're Brahmana, live in a city and teach others, preach. Unless you are very reclusive Brahmana.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. And the next question is basically an extension of the same. And the perspective is from a preaching point of view. So you have given the dharma of a grihastha and the qualities of a brahmana, and then preach even in the city if that's your nature. But my question, there is a little twist to it, that how do we preach this notion of varnashram that you have taken us through today, let's say in the congregations that we are in? That's the world that we live in. How do we take this subject and speak about this and establish in its true form as we have heard from you today?
Well, the true form is to be humble, to respect seniors and superiors, to respect the devotees, serve the devotees, feed the devotees, be truthful, be sincere, try to speak the absolute truth to others. That's the essence of it. And be honest, do some honest occupation. Don't be greedy, because that's the 15th chapter of this book, 7th canto, where it is said that if you are not satisfied, there is no question of you being satisfied. Just be satisfied. Try to develop this santushta and the quality of satisfaction. And then if you live this life, you will have the power to preach about it. And you will be able to also preach about the rural communities where it can be established in a more proper way. But in the context of living in this city, just preach these principles of Varnasrama, general principles of Varnasrama. Feeding others, respecting seniors, respecting devotees, serving devotees, being honest, doing some honest occupation, but foremost, respecting the devotees, respecting those who are preachers, respecting Prabhupada's followers, Prabhupada's disciples, respecting. That's essence of Varnasrama. And being honest yourself and feeding others and doing your duties. And then, helping the agricultural communities where people are trying to live simple life, which is also important.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. And the next question is from Anupama Radharani Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you for an enlightening class on Bhakti and Varnashram. You mentioned that one requires a little faith to begin with. Those who are atheistic are devoid of faith. They're enemies of the Lord and they derive no benefit from associating with a pure devotee. As was the case with Hiranyakashipu. It appears then there is a cycle in which the demoniac are caught in and cannot make progress on the spiritual path. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord states that the demoniac are cast into hellish planets again and again. What hope is there for such souls? How do they make progress? Are such souls condemned to suffer in the material world forever?
Thank you very much for this compassionate question. There is a compassion which is behind this question. See, therefore, it's a very beautiful question and beautifully asked. Even if demons or people with demoniac mentalities live in the society which is organized properly, they will have the opportunity to break this vicious circle by doing some agyata sukriti to great devotees. Everyone is bowing down and to a sannyasi, and you reluctantly you also bow down because there is some sort of social pressure which you feel. You would feel really stupid if you stand straight and everyone is bowing down. It's just a simple example how the social mechanisms work. You are in this society and sannyasi is respected, so maybe little reluctantly, maybe not so wholeheartedly, but still you kind of show some signs of respect. Or because of social custom, even though you have little demoniac nature, somewhat demoniac nature, still you invite some brahmanas to eat in your home. Or for your because it's also a custom that you do some rituals, so many ways. If you are in a properly socially organized society, you will have an opportunity to get some pious credits, some agyata sukriti, which ultimately will accumulate. And when this agyata sukriti will accumulate, you will develop an open a taste for associating with the devotees. You will develop the appreciation of a devotee. So there is no bar, even demonic people, if they live in a properly organized society, they will develop spiritually. Even if demonic people join ISKCON with some, with maybe not join, but come and visit ISKCON. I recently heard a story. One scientist came to a lecture, and he didn't believe his friend somehow or other. He said, let's go with me, and he kind of reluctantly, he didn't have much to do, so he reluctantly went to Hare Krishna temple and he heard Sunday feast class, and he didn't believe it, he didn't take it seriously. He was listening it with some sort of attitude which was not very conducive, but still he was there. He was when everyone was chanting, he chanted a little bit. So he came back home, and his wife put a plate with meat, which he was very attached to it. And he looked at this meat, and he realized that he cannot eat it. It was so repulsive to him. He went to bathroom, and he became nauseous and he threw up because of this. So he was somewhat demoniac, one can say, but he came to an atmosphere which purified him. He heard kirtan, he heard some class, he heard something, some katha. It purified him. So that's how it works. Agyata Sukriti. Even though intentionally he was not really prepared to be open to bhakti.
Hare Krishna. So the next question now we go to is from Dinesh Kumar. His inquiry is, the Varnasrama Dharma is established by Supreme Lord Krishna, who is absolute. Then why this Varnasrama Dharma gets deteriorated with time? What is the force that overpowers?
Sakale Neha Mahata Yoga Nashta Parantapa. Krishna himself says that by the influence of time, the time destroys everything. That's the definition of time. What is time? Time, according to the Sanskrit definition, is kalayati iti kalaha. The something kalayati sarvam. The something which puts an end to everything is kala, is the time. Time is the destructive power, and Krishna himself says that I come and destroy everything in the form of time. That's another form of Krishna in his destructive feature. So Krishna himself creates Varnasrama, Krishna himself maintains Varnasrama, and Krishna himself in the form of time destroys Varnasrama when Kali Yuga comes. But why he destroys Varnasrama? Because Kali Yuga is a very special time where all those unfulfilled desires, people with unfulfilled desires, which they could not possibly fulfill in a more pious social organization and more pious societies, unheard of desires, they come and they fulfill it, and therefore Krishna gives them facility to fulfill these desires. But those who are intelligent, they can understand there is no use to contaminate myself by fulfilling these dirty desires. Let me do something worthwhile.
Thank you, Maharaj. Next question, the last one, is from Neeraja Akshi Govinda Prabhu. How can we implement Varnasrama Dharma in the industry-based economy? So many people depend on industries for their livelihood.
Just 1 second, I want to find out if there is some questions. No, there is no questions. And it says that there is no translation on YouTube. There was no translation on YouTube. Okay. That's why there is no. Why? Okay. Okay, so I already answered this, that it's not possible to establish Varnasrama is industry-based society. Therefore, it's very important to try to create at least little pockets of agriculturally based society where agriculture is the basis of economy. And then, this industry-based society, inevitably it will collapse, especially because the monetary basis is so artificial. This whole, society is based on the value of some green paper, with little pattern in the green paper, with some faces of American presidents in it. So that's not a very solid foundation for the economy. Sooner or later this green paper will become what it is, yatharupam. It will become as it is, just green paper, which is not very useful. Now it has some artificially applied value, which is conventional. But this convention, as any convention, will be destroyed by the force of time. And at that time, the industry-based society will collapse. And I'm not into doomsdays, and I'm not into saying that it will happen now or whatever. But it's destined to happen. Because there is no foundation of this society. There is no piety in this society. There will be something. So we have to be prepared, at least mentally we have to be prepared, if not in a better way, by establishing some base, by trying to finance the agriculturally based communities. Like in Hungary they do it, and they have this beautiful community, and all the people who live in the cities, they contribute a little bit to this Krishna's Valley, to this community. They help because they know that ultimately this is where they can get shelter in this society. So that's just common sense, and therefore all these little communities are important, but they are struggling because they're trying to establish something in a very hostile atmosphere. So those people who have intelligence and who want to promote the cause of Varnasrama, which is important, they should help them to do it by giving some little financial support.
Thank you, Maharaj. And there is a last comment that comes from one of the devotees on YouTube, Raj Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Danvat Pranam. One of the most sensitive topic, Varnashram Dharma. It justifies itself to qualify for a whole session dedicated for it. So I think that's a nice comment to end our session with, because I think this session was really very, very useful, considering the confusion in the minds of devotees on the subject of Varnashram. And I think this brought in a lot of clarity.
I hope it didn't create more confusion. That's my only hope. Because nowadays we are in Kali Yuga is a very confused age, and whatever you say will be misinterpreted and confused even more. Anyway, let's see. I tried.
No, it was indeed useful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for yet another very illuminating session, Guru Maharaj. And I know that next week it is not going to be there a session. I'll be in touch with Anupama Govinda Prabhu to find out when the next session would be. We would be eagerly waiting for that, so that we can inform everyone about it. So thank you again. Please accept our most respectful obeisances.
Thank you.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha.
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
His Holiness Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
jai.